She's the voice behind the viral comedy, bold commentary, and truth-packed interviews that cut through the chaos. Author, brand creator, proud conservative Christian, this is Elsa. Welcome to the show that always brings bold faith, real truth, and no apologies.
Well, hey there, friends. We are here today with an interview. I'm super excited about this. As you can see, I do not have Clay with me this time. He'll be back in the next one. But today, this is really fascinating for me. We're going to be talking about what it was like to guard one of the most powerful and polarizing Christian figures in modern history. Today's guest isn't just spilling the tea. He is pouring it from a 500-page kettle. So we got to buckle up for this one. My guest today is going to be David Wilcox. He's a former California police officer turned personal bodyguard to the late Pat Robertson. And he's written a bombshell memoir called Protecting Pat Robertson, Confessions of a High-Priced Bagman. It is part memoir, part expose, and all truth. And he is taking us behind the curtain of the Christian Broadcasting Network, political campaigns, and his own personal conviction. So I want to welcome you, David, to the show. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Elsa. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So I was so glad when you reached out to me. We connected on good old LinkedIn over there, and you were so kind to reach out and offer to come talk about this. And off air, I was telling David that I still call myself every day. I call myself a baby Christian. I think I will live and die as a baby Christian. I will never know enough, and that's okay because it's the journey and the learning and just the growth is completely worth it. And so much of this is absolutely new information to me. So I want to start with you from the beginning, and I'm going to shut up and let you start talking in a moment, I promise. So you were a police officer in Oceanside, California. I would love to know your journey. What brought you from there to Regent University, and how on earth did you become Pat Robertson's personal bodyguard?
Wow. I was born and raised in Oceanside, California. It's a beach town right on the coast, about midway between San Diego and Los Angeles. It's my hometown. It used to be a Sleepyville beach community. And one of the strong aspects, I guess, is Oceanside has Camp Pendleton Marine Corps base attached to it. And I graduated high school from Oceanside High. I was a beach lifeguard in California for 6 years and went away to college, got a swimming scholarship, and came back to Oceanside. And after I graduated, and I had a job that summer lifeguarding, and a friend of mine told me, he said, "Hey," he says, "Oceanside's looking for some new police officers." And they said, "But it might be a little late for you because the deadline came for the application." So I called the city. They said, "Well, show up, and if we have some absentees, we'll let you take the test." They did. And I got hired second out of about 400 people that took the test, and went to work for Oceanside PD. Had a short-term career. I got injured on duty, got a lot of my right knee missing on line of duty injury, and retired. And I fell in love with a woman that I married, and she had always wanted to be a producer for the 700 Club TV show. And I thought, and she said, "Well, that's my goal. I want to go to grad school at CBN University, which is now Regent University." And I said, "Okay, well, let's go make your dream come true." So we packed up, we got married, we packed up, moved across the country. We arrived in August of all times to arrive in Virginia. And it was like I'd been dropped into weather hell from going from a beach community. It was 72 degrees year round. And anyway, we moved into student housing at Regent University on the campus of CBN, and I was a new husband, and I wanted to take care of my young bride, and I thought, I'm going to go get a job. And I went over to student services and turned in my resume to a beautiful woman named Nancy Keith. I'll never forget her. She just was very receiving and warm, and she looked at my resume. I said, "I want to get a job, and well, I'm going to grad school." So I enrolled in grad school as well. And she said, "Oh, you've got police experience." First of all, she said, "Do you know Pat Robertson?" "Oh, yeah, I've seen him on TV. Sure, I know who Pat Robertson is." And she said, well, he's thinking of running for president and he's looking for bodyguards right now. Would you be interested? I said, well, I just have two questions. What does it pay and where do I start? And that was pretty much it. I went over and talked with the head of the security department, Jim Small, who's now my best friend. He was the best man at my real legitimate wedding for my second bride. But anyway, Jim, we met. He hired me, brought me on board, and within a few weeks, I was living this duplicitous life where I would go to grad school at night, take my grad school classes, get up in the morning, put a suit and tie on, and I'd be shadowing Robertson throughout the day. And the weirdest part of it was weekends, Friday nights would come and we'd fly out somewhere across the country and he'd be doing pre-campaign stuff. He had started a group called Americans for Robertson, which was his PAC. And we were doing all of these things under their banner. And we would fly out on a Friday night to God knows where. And he would have 13, 14 events to do over the course of a weekend. And Sunday night we'd fly back into town and it was back to grad school. And it was just, it was a God thing. And, we talk about being a baby Christian. My philosophy is we're all baby Christians until we get called home. So we're always learning. We're never quite wise enough. But I had never, ever in my life really pursued a job. I mean, I always kind of backdoored into it, fell into it. I wanted to work at Disneyland when I was in college. I got hired there. I just showed up. They hired me that day. And my life's been that way, and I'm kind of like these people that can fall down in a mud pit and wake up and have a diamond stuck in their teeth. It's just, God's been very benevolent to me. And I think it's because I just had a real horrible deficit of upbringing. I did not have a father. He left when I was 9 months old. My mom was quite dysfunctional. And so I pretty much raised myself. And I, whether you believe this or not, God audibly spoke to me when I was a teenager. And he said, I know you've never had a real father, but I'm going to be your father. And I'm going to provide for you.
My heart.
I cry.
You're going to make me cry.
But he told me, he says, you got to just be patient. And I was. And he's taken care of me. I mean, I have done so many incredible things. I've been able to produce animated cartoons for CBN that have evangelized nearly 1/5 of the world with the Christmas story. I've been Pat's bodyguard. I've traveled all over. I've dined with kings and princes and presidents. It's just been a phenomenal life, but I've trusted in him. So that's kind of a convoluted answer to your question, but that's how I became the bodyguard for Pat. And I eventually took over the entire security department. And as I wrote in my book, it was really a journey because I started off really, really believing in what Pat Robertson was doing. I mean, I was willing to take a bullet for the man. I loved him. He was doing miraculous things. He had social programs. Whenever a hurricane would strike down in the South, Pat's Operation Blessing was down there within 24 hours with hot meals and water, and weeks before FEMA, and that was a part of his ministry, handing out food, handing out water. And I was donating to the 2,500 Club member. I was giving $2,500 a year. I wasn't making a lot of money, but I believed in what he was doing. He had literacy programs in the inner cities. He was just doing wonderful things. And I was proud. I was so proud to be at his side. And then politics got involved.
Yeah.
And
That marked the change for you, right?
Right. Like politics has done with so many people's lives. It pollutes them. It draws them. It perverts them. And I watched this taking place very early on with Americans for Robertson. And then when Pat made his decision, and I'll tell you about that if you want, the defining moment. And I can pinpoint it, and you could give me sodium pentothal and my story wouldn't change. We were in the backseat of the company car. Pat, we always drove Pat around. He hated limousines. He hated Jim and Tammy Baker because they drove around a white stretch limo all the time.
Right.
He said, "I'll refuse to get in a limo if you bring me one." We drove him in a dark blue Lincoln Town car. Pat was a big guy. Pat's about 6'3.5", And
Really? I didn't realize he was
yeah,
that tall. Wow. Okay.
that's why he hired me. I'm 6'5". He could duck behind me.
There you go.
Anyway, we're sitting in the company car, and you're probably too young to remember the movies back in the 1940s or that era where the hero of the story had a little angel and a devil sitting on his shoulders, and they'd be trying to sway them over to this side. It's exactly what it was like. Pat was in the back seat of the car, sitting in the middle. On one side, he had Rob Hartley, who was the money man for CBN, who's like the vice president of development. He controlled the coffers. And on the other side was a guy named Mark Nuttall, who was Pat's campaign manager. And I'm not going to go any further because I don't want to get sued. Anyway, I was sitting in the shotgun seat where I normally sat, and I was listening to this conversation. And Mark Nuttall started off. He said, "Pat, you've got to give your campaign, Americans for Robertson, access to the 3.5 million names on the CBN donor mailing list. We don't have any money. We need the money. They got deep pockets. Give it. We need it, Pat. If you want to be president, we need it." Shift over to the angel, Rob Hartley. "Pat, you can't do that. First, it's illegal. You can't be a tax-exempt ministry status and give to a political campaign like that. Secondly, it's going to confuse the heck out of people. You got these little old ladies out there sending their $20 a month. They're on fixed income. Suddenly they're going to get mailing from Americans for Robertson. Pat Robertson, get him in the White House. A couple of things are going to happen. The $20 is going to have to be decided. Am I going to give it to CBN ministry, or am I going to give it to the political campaign? So that's going to fragment the donor base. The other people are going to go, Pat Robertson running for president, church and state, forget that guy. I'm going to send my $20 elsewhere, And it went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, we are at the crossroads. We are at a critical point for this ministry.
You remember thinking that in that moment then, even, yeah.
Oh,
right
God.
away.
I was just, not too many things make me anxious, but this really bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came, and there was this, they finished talking, and there was about 30 seconds of absolute silence. And then I heard Pat turn to the money man, Rob Hartley, and he said, "Give him the list." And I got punched.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward, you guys don't need to know all the gruesome details. You can get that in the book. But here's the result of that one ego-driven decision. When Pat Robertson came back from politics, when he got his keister handed to him on the primary, super primaries took place, he knew he didn't have a snowball's chance. He came back to CBN. 630 employees lost their jobs because the money dropped off by over 40%. That one decision. In fact, Pat came back to CBN, and it was decimated, and it still was hemorrhaging. And he took a legal pad, which is what he always used to write on, and he walked around the campus, the entire campus of CBN, and he would stop people in the hallway, and he would say, "What's your name? What do you do? And who do you report to?" And they tell him, "Well, my name is John Doe, and I work in direct mail marketing." And he'd make notes. And then he would give the papers to Jim Small, who was the head of the security department at the time. And he would have all the people that he needed laid off now. It was Jim's cheerful job to walk around to all the presidents and say, "Pat wants these people gone."
Wow.
It was a critical blow. And then it got worse because he got desperate. And I can give you a bushel full of examples, and it'll kind of make you sick to your stomach.
Yeah. So this had to be so difficult for you to witness firsthand. So you're seeing one side of things. The public is seeing something completely different, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that had to have been one heck of a struggle to just to reconcile these two realities, or one's a false reality, the other one is reality. Your relationship with him, was it strictly bodyguard, person you're guarding? Did you have, were you able to have conversations? Could you address any of these things with him, or was there just that line between you two that you just simply couldn't cross over?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, Pat knew thousands and thousands and thousands of people. But I can tell you point blank, he did not have a best friend that he could call in a crisis. I wasn't it. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
He used me and before me, Jim Small, to kind of be his hitman. If he wanted somebody terminated, he'd say, I want you to go and that guy's gone. Get rid of him now. And you'd have to go deliver the bad news. He'd have you run errands for him. I've got dozens and dozens of anecdotes in there. We had a student housing area. There was word that one of the law students was beating his wife down there. So Pat grabbed me in the hallway one day and says, David, he says, grab a couple guys from your goon squad and go over there, find that guy and take him out back and rough him up a little bit. And I said, Pat, are you going to post my bail when he has me arrested for assault and battery? He said, well, you know how to take care of it. Just go take care of that. I mean, that's the kind of thing, he just assigned you. He's quick draw McGraw on street vengeance.
Right.
The thing that if I could tell one set of stories that'll really paint the picture, people are criticizing me for writing the book because, they all believe what they saw for 60 minutes, 5 days a week on the 700 Club. Fatherly Pat Robertson leaning into the camera, pray with me now. When that red light went off, he was a tyrant.
Wow.
And
was that always, or just when the political side came in?
Here's the crux of the entire book that I wrote about Pat. When he got back at CBN and saw what had happened without him being there, 40-some% drop in the money. Okay, he had an epiphany. He realized, oh my God, what's going to happen when I leave this earth to my ministry? There's no way to fill in, and so he panicked. And he decided to go after what I call these get-rich-quick schemes. And I used to tell Pat, and I spoke very honestly with him because I didn't care if he fired me or not. I would get another job, and I carried a gun. So, but I'd tell him, Pat, why are you doing this stuff? There's an old saying, you dance with the one that brought you to the dance. You didn't get where you are doing multi-level marketing and get-rich-quick schemes. You got here because of ministry. You ministered to people. And he just kind of blew me off. He was focused. He started getting involved, Elsa, with direct mail, multi-level marketing.
Oh, right.
He started a company called Benefits Plus. They were selling coupon books, and he was going around the country telling people they could make $10,000-$15,000 a month selling this thing. And four of the people that he hired to run it, I got spidey sense going on. And I was like, these guys are creepy. I told him, I said, I'm going to run background checks on them, Pat, because they're in a fiduciary capacity for you. And he said, oh, I'm not doing that. They love the Lord. They're going to tell me they're going to make a lot of money. They were all crooks, bankruptcies, fraud, embezzlement, stuff. And he gave them the keys to the kingdom. They were off the property that day. He got involved with and people can Google this. Check out a guy named Mobutu Sese Seko. He was the dictator of Zaire. We went over to Zaire, and Pat cut a deal to do diamond mining in Zaire. And he set up a private company. And Mobutu was a butcher. He killed tens of thousands of his own people. And I thought, what's this Baptist minister doing, having his side tied to President Mobutu? And then he got involved with a guy named Charles Taylor, the dictator of Liberia. Taylor was eventually tried by the World Court for crimes against humanity. He wiped out tens of thousands of his own people. And Pat had a gold mining operation with him. And here's where the duplicity came in. It's really very graphic. Pat had this group called Operation Blessing that used to do really good work. I mentioned it before. They go down, take care of hurricane victims. Johnny on the spot. Great operation. Pat gets on the air, and there was a migration. I can't give you the exact dates, but there were nearly 1 million refugees coming into Zaire I can't remember the specific details, but they were fleeing by the truckloads, getting away from. I want to say it was Liberia, but anyway, it's not important. They were refugees. They were scared. They were living in these dirt fields out in Zaire, and they had a cholera outbreak. And 10s and 20s and 30s every day were starting to die of cholera. So Pat had this thing he had set up years prior called the Flying Hospital. It was an L-1011 jet, equipped state-of-the-art operating rooms, doctors' treatment rooms. They were supposed to fly around the world and do all these things. Well, one thing, with Pat Robertson, it was always ready, fire, aim. He never did his homework. It was like, great cause, let's do it. He never checked it out. The plane couldn't land in like 30, 40% of the airports in the world. It was a huge plane. So he has this plane, the Flying Hospital, and he comes on the air and he's leaning into the camera. He says, folks, we've got these pictures of these people dying in the fields of Zaire. They've got cholera. Here's my vision. I want to get 100 doctors together with my Flying Hospital, send drugs, the workers over there, and we're going to save the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. I need your money now for Operation Blessing. And the money started coming in. And it looked a big success. Well, it was a diversion. About maybe 3% of the money went to its cause. They sent aspirin and Tylenol. They sent a handful of workers. And the Doctors Without Borders were there. And there's a film out. I don't have the name of it, the video. You can Google it. But they said, yeah, CBN had people over there. They were running around, about a dozen of them, throwing Bibles at people and treating them with aspirin. We don't treat cholera with aspirin. Okay, so where did the rest of the money go? Coincidentally, Pat Robertson's diamond and gold mining operation, a company that he set up, he owned 100% of it, was nearby. They paved the landing field so these planes that he bought could get in. There's photo in the book of them offloading a diamond mining dredge for Pat's diamond mining operation, all paid for by Operation Blessing and the refugee cholera money. And
Wow.
people were in shock. They don't believe me. I was like,
Right.
track it down. It's there. So he started raising this money under false pretenses. And then he starts doing, what else? Oh, he decided he was going to take over oil refining in California during their gas issues. This guy pitched a deal to him. He says, there's a refining facility in Long Beach, California. You can pick it up for pennies on the dollar. And we can put ships off the coast of Long Beach and pipe the oil in, and you can refine it and make gasoline. You'll be wealthy beyond compare. Let's do it. They pumped in millions and millions and millions of dollars of ministry money, never created one drop of gasoline, never refined one drop of oil. The refinery was under EPA restriction. It had so many EPA violations, it would have cost $1 zillion to get it up and running properly. They just never did the homework. He just always shot from the hip. The book's full of these things. So it was like, and I say the book is transitional. It was Pat Robertson, the good guy, doing great ministry work, and then politics, pollution, ethics have been skewed, win at any cost, and he starts coming up and says, I got to do something to bring constant long-term money in to pay to run the ministry when I'm gone. And none of it worked. And I think it's because God went, I'm taking my blessing off you, my son, because you're not listening to me. And I got to a point where I was just like, I can't tolerate this anymore. I can't keep this guy alive and do his bidding for him when he's corrupt. I don't like that. So I know I'm long-winded, but it's a very convoluted thing that he did. And people say, well, that's Pat Robertson. He's the 700 Club guy. He prays for people. Sure he does. That feeds the machine. Right. That's the Holy Grail, was that TV show. And, the rest is history. He imploded.
Well, I wouldn't call you long-winded. I would call you preemptively answering my questions.
Okay.
I'm looking as we're chatting, I'm looking at my question. I'm like, yep, he's answering that. Yep, you are making my job so easy. You gotta make me work a little bit.
Okay.
I'm
Fire
kidding.
away.
I'm kidding. Well, so I'm listening to all this, and throughout it, I'm thinking, how did they let you ever publish this book? Because this is very damning, provable information,
Right.
and obviously tarnishes that image of this beloved figure. You had to have had tremendous opposition to this, or did they just know that you have the receipts and there's nothing they can do about it, or did they try?
Well, when I worked for Pat originally for a period of time, I left for a very brief window of time to go out to California. I had my master's degree in animation and film, and I created an animated film. It won a Student Academy Award. It was very irreverent. I'll send you a copy of it. And when I came back, I took over and I built an animation studio for CBN because I wrote my proposal. I said, "You got everything here you need to produce animation, except the studio. Give me some money and I'll build it for you." And then we ended up doing these videos that have evangelized the world.
Yeah.
But then I came back to CBN. That's when I was full-time bodyguard. And they stumbled. Remember I told you Pat was ready, fire, aim? He said,
Yes.
"Brother, I need you to," he said, "Jim Small says you're the only guy in the property that can keep me alive. Will you take over for him?" I said, "Sure, I'd be honored to." Didn't ask me to sign an NDA.
I was wondering about that. That was one of the first things. I'm like, where's the NDA? How did they not do an NDA? That's crazy.
That's because everybody's scared to death of Pat Robertson at CBN in those days. He used to walk down the hall. Pat would always wear cowboy boots. And he'd walk down the third floor hall, which was called the Vice President's Row. All the VPs had their offices up there. And you hear him clump, clump, clump. And it was like the angel of death was coming down the hallway. The vice presidents would run into their offices and close their door and sprinkle imaginary blood over the doorpost, hoping the angel of Pat would pass and wasn't going to, kill him, And
Right.
and so nobody would ever go to Pat and say, "Pat, you screwed up. You didn't get an NDA from David. You need to go get that." Nobody had the backbone to do it. So
Right.
I rode the train. I figured, hey man, all the bets are off. I can do whatever I want because they've got no legal recourse.
Right.
And yeah, I've got a lot of stuff in there,
Yeah.
but
Did you get in your personal life, friends, family, anyone? Did anyone give you pushback on writing? Because I mean, it's it's a tell-all basically. It's a memoir. It's a tell-all. It's very exposing of people.
yeah,
And that can, let's be realistic. Even in our nice, pretty Christian world, that could potentially bring threats and all kinds of negative attention on you and your family. I'm thinking all of the things, retaliatory actions. I mean, so much could have been, and maybe was, brought upon you and yours. Was anybody telling you? And I saw that reaction, so there must be a yes to that.
Oh yeah, it was a big yes. When I first posted it, I think I put it on Facebook, and I'm not a real social media guy. I'm kind of private in that regard. But I put it on Facebook, and there were a lot of CBN people on there. And boy, I mean, the floodgates open. I got a couple of messages from some people that I really loved and respected. One guy had actually worked for me in security. He'd been a security aide, and he says, "How dare you, condemn Brother Pat? I took him to the airport 5 or 6 times, and he was nothing more than a saint and a gentleman." I said, "Jerry," I said, "I venture to say I spent more time with that man in one day than you did with your entire career with CBN. So you've got no room to criticize me." And then I had one said that they were likening me to Satan, and I was a betrayer, and I was a Judas, and I said, they said he's done wonderful things through his ministry in the 700 Club. I said, "Oh, I agree with you." I said, 100%. He's done some wonderful things. He's also done some really shady things. And I said, why don't you follow up with the 640 people who were coworkers of yours that lost their jobs because he decided to go into politics? Why don't you see how they feel about Pat Robertson? And, it's fine. I'm a big boy. I mean, when I was a cop, I had two motorcycle gang members put a $25,000 hit out on me to kill me because I sent them to prison. And so I'm no stranger to that. I've lived a good life. You want me, come and get me. I don't care. I know where I'm going. But it's people are visceral. They either love the guy or hate the guy. There's no middle ground with him. It's very polarizing. But yeah, I mean, people are entitled to their opinion, but
Sure.
I've got all the tangible evidence. I was there. I mean, I did a lot of this stuff. I delivered a lot of his messages, and I took him everywhere, for that period of time. And it's all the truth. It's in the book. That's why it's so long.
What would you say your biggest hope is? Like, what would you say your goal was for publishing that book? Is it just, I know, probably you're a seeker of truth,
Yeah.
is it just for the sake of truth? Is it for any hope of reform in the upper echelon of the Christian community, particularly, these broadcasting companies, and if they're running for political office or any of those things? I just, we've talked off air about accountability, and I'm such a huge fan of accountability. Even when I'm the one that has to take it for something, I just truly love truth, facts and all of that. Does that kind of resonate with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, we're in sync today on questions. I was thinking about something comparable you might ask. My big takeaway from the book, and I think I mentioned it in there pretty well, is God's a big God. He's everywhere. And those of you who go out and join a church, and I'm not against church. I was a big churchgoer. I was a junior warden in the Episcopal Church here in Chesapeake, Virginia for many years. And I go to church religiously, no pun intended. But the takeaway I want you to get is don't put your faith in the religious leaders. You don't need them to have worship time with God. You don't need them to point their bony finger. I mentioned, I think in the book, about these pastors who get up there and they point their bony finger at you and condemn, you're looking at porn and you're a sinner and blah, blah, blah. At the time I wrote that book, 60+% of all pastors were actively involved in online pornography. So it's kind of the pot calling the kettle black. So men are corruptible. Men are fallible. Men are pastors. Women are pastors. They're corruptible. Okay? Don't put too much stock in them. Okay? They're not God Jr.
Right.
They don't.
I think that is one of the biggest, from what I understand, that's like one of the biggest reasons people walk away and have bitterness towards the church. It's not because of God. It's not because of Jesus. It's because of people disappointing and failing them. And every time I hear that, it's like a little knife in my heart, because it tells me, and I don't mean this, hard, but I have to say, then that must mean that your faith was in man and not in God, right? Like if you're getting pushed away from your faith, from what you claim to believe in, which is God, and you walk away and turn your back on God because of what people do and have done and say, then your faith wasn't in the right place, right?
Well, faith to me is an individual thing. It's a one key holder thing. My faith is my faith, and if your faith gets strengthened by going and sitting in a church for 2 hours every Sunday, and you're getting something from the message, and it's changing your life for the better, God, by all means go. But don't think that it's the end all to be all. Be prepared. Be guarded. Be wise when you listen to the word. Pat, like I say, he was doing some great things, and they all proved out. They were above board. They were very legitimate, legal, ethical. And then politics came to that change. But then he was doing these things that were unethical, and you had to weigh it against what's the truth here. What he's doing legal? Is he obeying the law? Is it spiritual? Is it scriptural? And if not, you need to reassess your thing. Maybe go find another church. But don't sit there and just blindly go along. That's who's doing good through that.
Right.
And that's one of the criticisms and I'll probably offend a bunch of people, so just line up when you come to get me. But the Catholic Church, you have to confess your sins through a third party to God. Where is that coming from?
Right.
And then you look at some of the people that are receiving the confession. Catholic Church doesn't have a real stellar reputation, so it's like I don't think this is God's here. I talk to him every morning in the shower because I got water pouring down on me. I'm cushioned from the outside. I can't hear anything, and I'm just crying. I'm telling him, "Thank you for a wonderful life. Could you give me some more favor this week?" Whatever it is. It's just speaking from my heart. It doesn't have to be long. Don't have to be on my knees. But that's the message I'm trying to get to people is if Pat Robertson, who built a mega ministry, has ministered to people all over the world through the 700th TV show, changed lives. I mean, my ex-wife used to do testimonials. I see these changes in people's lives. If he can do that, and then he can go off straight off course, who's to say your pastor can't?
Right.
Just be smart. You don't need to do anything overt. Hey, this guy wrote a book about Pat Robertson, and you're trying to tell me the same things he did, so I'm leaving your church. Come on. We're not that rudimentary. Just be wise. And
in your mind, in your experience with Pat Robertson, and just that whole world, seeing it from the other side, seeing it from the inside, really, with specific regard to Pat Robertson, can you look at his life, his contributions, and say does one cancel out the other, or can the two exist in the same space? All of the good and all of the bad, or does the bad cancel the good? Like how do you reconcile it in your mind? Because I think that's probably a really hard thing for people to do. And I have a personal secondhand, I guess, experience with a pastor, a church. It was like the first one that I kind of vicariously started my true faith journey on. And there ended up being, drama, of course. That's always the thing that happens, right? That pushes you away. And for me personally, I'm able to look at those sermons or remember those sermons and the lessons that I learned from them, and still get that same joy, because it was the message, not the messenger, I guess, in a way. So I'm wondering if you're able to do that with him, or is it just too much?
Wow, that's a mind melter right there. No, he really is. I'm spinning around. I love Pat as a human being. I saw a great many humanitarian efforts by him, personal humanitarian efforts. I watched him. We had a floor producer at the 700 Club, lost her husband in a rock climbing accident, and Pat ended up buying her a house. Going to take care of her. She worked for him for years and years. Just a benevolent thing. No fanfare, no press release, no nothing. He'd do a lot of those things. But then he'd also go to the other extreme too. And he was a very complex man. I don't think I'm in any position to really judge whether his net worth is good or bad. He did what he did. I know the motives behind it were to take care of his ministry. He wanted to find a revenue stream that would last longer than he would and give it a hope. Because there are studies out that showed that personality-driven ministries, once the personality leaves, the ministries tend to implode. Right. It's hard to find another Pat Robertson to fill in. So I think Pat showed his human side much more in his later years, because he was trying to take care of his baby, his ministry, which was where he got his start. That's his birthright. He was trying to salvage that. I think he realized he made some mistakes going into politics. He saw the dark side of it, but I think he just flat out ran out of time. Yeah. And Pat tended to draw counsel from those he shouldn't have gotten counsel from. If you, and maybe I can end with this. one day we were walking along, and he said, he told me, he'd always tell me, he said, I just made so-and-so a vice president or whatever, And I stopped. I said, you know what, Pat? I said, Charles Manson could drive up in a Mercedes Benz, get out wearing $1,000 suit and sporting a Rolex, and you'd make him a vice president at CBN. That's how bad your discernment is. He went, I'm not that bad, am I? I said, oh, yeah, you are. I said, you got some real clowns working for you. And, and he just kind of went on his merry way. He tended to choose people that looked good in the role, but Pat was a controller. He wanted control of everything. And he put people in positions that were disposable in case his plan didn't work out. He would fire that guy and get another guy in. The people that headed up Regent University, I used to joke that their office chair was over a trapdoor. I mean, he'd tell them to do something. If it didn't work out, oh, you're out. Let's get another president here. So he didn't take accountability for his failures. He took accountability for the successes, but he strictly just ran out of time. He was trying to take care of his baby, the ministry. I don't blame him. I don't hate him. I just think people don't even know the truth. And, that's what I put in the book. And Jim Small helped me write some of it. He was with Pat before I was. Jim gave me my job. We sometimes get together. We see him every Christmas down in Ocala. We sit there, we talk in Pat Robertson voices to each other because he get really high. Brother, what are you doing? That kind of a thing, And our wives sit there and go, you guys are just ill, But he was a dynamic guy, but he just made some bad decisions. And he didn't listen to his father. He listened to his lackeys and get him right in the keister.
There's really so much, underlying valuable message throughout this whole story, throughout your whole book, really, the false idols, the, having that discernment and going directly to God instead of, middlemen all the time, which we all tend to do. And then it is natural, human nature, right, to start putting people on pedestals and all of that. And, and I think it's really valuable for any Christian, new or seasoned, whatever you want to call it, to remember those things. And, so it's kind of also, we called it a memoir, we called it an expose, we called the book all these things. But it's really a lot of reminders to use discernment and to just not put people on those pedestals and just be truth seekers, really, and accept that even when the truth isn't pretty and it isn't what we want to hear, I think we, as people, have a tendency to not want to hear things that don't align with what we want to think, right? That's rampant in our culture. If it doesn't sound pretty, if it doesn't align with what I think, then it can't be true, or that person must be a bad person. And, the truth really is that there's a lot of gray areas. And I really love how you kind of close that out with acknowledging the good and the bad, the truth and the myth and all of the things that go with it. And I just think it's really, really fair, to be honest with you, and anyone who's watching and, is coming into this defensively, in that must protect the legacy of Pat Robertson. It's fair. It's fair and it's honest, and, and a personal account of your experience through that. I would be very remiss if I don't mention this. This is not your only book out on that. We're going to put up the cover here. You also wrote this book about Ralph Reed and the Christian Coalition. So I want everyone, I guess this means I'm just going to have you come back on again so we could talk specifically about that one.
Don't throw me into the briar patch. Don't throw me into the briar patch. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, well, the tie-in, just quickly, is one of the things Pat did back when I was there, when I just had come on, he formed the Christian Coalition. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are old enough to remember them, they were a political juggernaut. In fact, when they imploded, Pat kind of took the skeletal machine and converted it into his political action committee for Americans for Robertson. When he put this guy, Ralph Reed, in charge of the Christian Coalition, and I was there watching Ralph Reed. Yeah, I told my wife at the time, I said, yeah, I met this guy, Ralph Reed. I said, I was with him for like 5 minutes today, and I just wanted to go get steam cleaned and make sure I had my wallet with me. I mean,
Boy.
just a snake oil salesman. Anyway,
Yeah.
long story short, Ralph Reed should have gone to prison. I mean, I got evidence in that book that would, I mean, in fact, his associates, just quickly, the associates that he worked with after he left the Christian Coalition all went to prison for a time. But Ralph Reed had some secret power brokers in the White House and in politics that got his subpoena lifted, and he got to go scot-free. And the guy's committed felony. He's laundered money. I've got all the evidence is in his book. So yeah, I'd really love to talk to you about that because, and I would love it if Ralph Reed sued me because I'd love to have discovery and go back and check his tax returns all these times. Guy was making millions off of exploiting. He was telling people at the Christian Coalition that gambling was a cancer. It was turning wives into widows and children into orphans. People were throwing money at him to go fight gambling. Fast forward a few years later, he's secretly promoting and protecting Indian gambling casinos in Louisiana. He got paid about $3 million for that little clandestine thing. But nobody knew about that. They will when they get the book.
Yes.
Okay?
Oh,
and
there's,
supported,
like we said in the beginning, lots of tea.
Yeah. So anyway, I get passionate about it because it's just so full of nuggets about who he really is and what he really did. So anyway, but you've been just wonderful and so welcoming, and you haven't treated me like I had a dead fish in my pocket like most people do. But
no,
yeah,
like I told you from the beginning, I'm coming in with an open heart and no preconceived notions on anything. So, I'm simply receptive to hearing the different perspectives, the different experiences throughout this. And as I've been doing my thing and being open about my Christian journey, which, to be perfectly honest, has been amazing and wonderful. And, I see why people say that there is a lot that comes with it that is not so good. Of course, you open yourself, when you're public about it, you open yourself up to, just very negative people saying negative things. And for me, that's a great experience because it's all things that show me not only how strong my faith is, but how strong I am just as a human, and to not be affected and bothered by those things. And the biggest reason for that is because I know who I belong to, and I know whose opinion of me matters the most. So when people on the internet are saying, much like you, receiving the negativity, you just don't factor into my life unless you're the big guy. Your opinion just does not hold the weight that you think it does, right?
Well, let me leave you with this parting assessment, because I read people pretty good at cop training and bodyguarding. You are very bold in professing that you're a new Christian. Think about a field. You're a fresh field of furrowed ground. It's a lot of ability to get things planted in there. Your faith is strong. It hasn't been bombarded from a bunch of weeds and briars and other things. It's at the most powerful stage right now for you, and you need to guard that. Be patient. I want to learn more. I'm going to go seek this guy because he's been a pastor for 30 years. He knows all the answers. Not necessary.
You read me well, by the way. I want to know everything 5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But be patient in it. Digest it. Okay. You go ahead and have a wonderful meal. Digest it. If it doesn't suit you, you get rid of it. But you're well fertilized, fertile ground, ripe for planting, and the crops will be abundant in the future. But you got to wait. And seek God. Don't go to man for your critical answers. It's wise to get counsel. It's wise to get a second, third opinion. I go to my wife all the time. Am I being a dope for doing this? Yeah, you are. Okay. She's wise. Okay. But don't be anxious to be super Christian. Okay. Because it's a love affair with you and the Creator. And just be patient. It'll come. But just be guarded. That's what I'm trying to tell people. Is if Pat Robertson can stumble and fall, do you think you can too?
Right. Yeah. It's actually, I do find hearing these types of things, it is hard. And I think it's hard for any Christian to hear that just wants to be so good in their faith. And it knocks you sideways a little bit, because exactly that, like if what, in our minds have as like the pinnacles of faith and connection with God, if they stumble, and they're so much more Christian than we are, so yeah, that's, yes, those are definitely things that come into my mind, and I'm sure other Christians' minds too, that, how easy it is to fall. And I guess my thought on that would be that's actually a really good thing to know, because like you said, it'll keep me on my guard. It'll keep others on their guard as well,
Sure.
to, guard our hearts and minds in Christ alone. And yeah, and I want to tell you something as well, if I may. One of the first Bible verses that I learned is, maybe it's kind of an odd one, but there's a whole little story that goes with it. It's I will summarize it so quickly. When I really opened my heart and said, I think this is the direction I belong in, but I'm not sure. And I asked God, give me a sign. That's what we all say, right? Give me a sign, God.
Yeah.
And literally the next day, a postcard came in the mail with 1 Peter 4:10. Each of you should use whatever gifts you have received in order to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace. And I went, oh my. And as we were talking the very beginning, and you were telling your story of how things just fall into your lap and they just happen. And that was really the first thing that popped into my mind, 1 Peter 4:10 for you as well. And, just what a blessing that is to use whatever gifts we have received to serve God, and to serve others. So I love it.
One other thing that's just critical is pray without ceasing. But you got to understand, sometimes the answer to the prayer is no. It's not silence from God. It's saying, no, that's not the best for you right now. If you think about all the dominoes that God's got to line up for your prayer to take place, right now might be the time for it to come to fruition. So you got to be patient, keep your ear peeled for his voice, and he doesn't speak to you in a klaxon horn. He speaks to you in a still, small voice. Okay, if you're hearing things, like Charlie Brown's teacher, that's not God. Still small voice. In the quiet, 2, 3 in the morning, you may wake up, get a little nugget placed in your head. That's the way he operates. Okay, he's not necessarily standing there with all the robes and the vestments and, this is for you, this is for you. That's theatrics. Okay, that's theatrics. That's Broadway. That's showbiz. Okay, religion and a relationship with God is very rudimentary. It's a very simple connection, and that's what we have to rely on for the truth, because there's too much media. And now we're in AI time. We're seeing all these things on there. Is that real? Did that kid just levitate over that building? What was that?
Discernment is getting harder and harder, isn't it?
Be guarded. Be guarded. Yeah. Elsa, you've been a delight.
Thank you. So have you. What a wonderful and what a way that we just kind of closed out with church a little bit right there.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for coming on. Please tell everyone where they can find your books and your website, any of the things that they can find you and your work.
Well, the books are both available on Amazon, and we're major booksellers. It's called Protecting Pat Robertson, Confessions of a High-Priced Bagman. That's a whole other story that's in the book, and why I refer to myself as a bagman. And then the other book is Trial of the Devil Incarnate, Ralph Reed, God's Flim Flam Man. They're both available now. They've been available. You can get them also through my website, bigfatcatbooks.com. And I have a site called the Flim Flam Chronicles. And it doesn't cost you a thing. Go there. And I did a series of about 8 to 10 minute narratives about Pat Robertson and about Ralph Reed. If you want a shock, go to the Flim Flam Chronicles and check out the Ralph Reed narratives. And you're going to think I'm either the biggest liar on the planet or he's the biggest duplicitous person on the planet. In fact, the Huffington Post labeled him as the monumental hypocrite of our time. Ralph Reed, the former head of the Christian Coalition. All the answers are there. Check it out. Doesn't cost you a thing. Just go there. Just trying to get the truth out. And you could buy the book. My wife needs a new pair of shoes. And,
Mama needs a new pair of shoes.
Wow, that's a oldie.
Oh my goodness, David, I almost called you David Reed. I'm so sorry, David Wilcox. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Guys, I can't thank you all enough for watching this. Please go check out those books. I will put the links in the show notes for all of us, and we will see you next time. Take care, guys.